Allah created human beings in difficulty. And He created human beings in heavy burden. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. We certainly created the human being buried under heavy loads, exhaustive labor. Emotionally you're struggling, physically you're taxed, you're struggling, health-wise you may be struggling, financially you may be struggling, because of people you may be struggling. This life, Allah designed it to be difficult. Sometimes you look at other people and you say, they have it so much easier than I do. But you don't know what other difficulties Allah gave them that are invisible from you. Everyone has difficulties. Everyone has challenges. You would think, for example, that the Pharaoh, Fir'aun, had kingdom, empire. He had the world's largest army at the time. He had everything you could want. All the wealth you could want, all the power you could want, all the status you could want. He has everything. And how come he has everything and the believers have nothing? And yet Allah describes about him that he lived in a state of fear. وَنُرِيَ فِرْعَوْنَ وَهَامَانَ وَجُنُودَهُمَا مَا كَانُوا يَحْذَرُونَ. They used to live in a state of fear. He used to get nightmares at night. He couldn't find peace. Sometimes people have material things, but they don't have peace. Sometimes people have physical health, but they don't have mental health. They don't have emotional health. So all human beings were put in a state of struggle. And that's believers and non-believers. So the first thing that I want to get across to all of you and remind myself of is, because we are believers, that does not mean our problems disappear. It's not like, because I'm a believer, I'm not going to be sad. Or because I'm a believer, I'm not going to experience anxiety. Or I'm not going to have family problems. Or I'm not going to have financial problems or health problems or whatever else. Belief, our faith in Allah, our relationship with Allah is not there to solve our problems. It's not there to get rid of the people in our life that are causing us trouble. That's not the purpose of our faith. If that was the case, then the prophets, ﷺ, who had the most close connection with Allah, would have had the easiest life. They would deserve, because they would make dua, all their problems would disappear. And if you study the prophets, the closest people to Allah, ﷺ, they have the hardest life. They have the toughest life. And the toughest life comes to them not even from some faraway enemies, it comes to them from their own families. In other words, it comes to them from people they can't even escape. They're with them every day. They're with them their whole lives. And they can't escape those problems. So the idea that human beings are created and were placed in a situation where they're going to struggle, they're going to have to deal with very difficult circumstances, very difficult situations, and even people. They're going to have to deal with that, is part of life. And that has nothing to do with, if you had more iman, you wouldn't have these problems. As a matter of fact, people assume the higher your iman, the problems are going to go away. No, it doesn't work that way. Allah created us and He put us inside of a storm. Imagine a storm in the ocean. You're in a storm. And the waves are turbulent and you've got your little boat, etc. And you're constantly worried about sinking. And you're worried about those who are sinking next to you. What does the faith do? It gives you the strength and it gives you the ability to go through the storm, to navigate the storm. It doesn't mean you don't get wet. It doesn't mean sometimes the boat almost doesn't tip over. But you now have the ability to go through it and survive the storm. You see, that's the purpose of our faith. Is not to get rid of the problem, but to actually strengthen us so we can go through the problem.